If you were confronted by this unit in battle, you would want to save the last bullet for yourself, as the tales of what they did to their captured enemies are haunting. Even one of its commanders, Matthias Franja, testified at a war crimes tribunal, describing one of their actions in court with these words: "In their march, these men slaughtered anyone they encountered who was not wearing a fez. There were instances when an officer leading the column saw people working in the fields. Moment later, when he looked back, he could see that those who had just been working were no longer alive. The Albanians, as soon as they noticed, would simply leave the column and kill them." In the tumultuous times of World War II, the 13th Waffen Mountain Division of the SS Handschar, commonly known as the Handžar Division, stood out as one of the most unique and controversial military units. Formed primarily from Muslims in the independent state of Croatia, this division was part of the German Wehrmacht and was named Handjar, after the traditional battle knife of the region. It was also known as the First Croatian, as it was assembled from areas within the independent state of Croatia. During the period from March to October 1944, the 13th SS Handžar Division committed numerous particularly heinous crimes in Srem and the northeastern part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Handžar Division's treatment of captured partisans and even wounded prisoners was horrifyingly cruel, far worse than their other brutal acts, showing a shocking lack of humanity. The unit, which was initially formed to protect homes and families, deviated significantly from its intended purpose. In this video, you will learn about this controversial unit, including why they were actually formed and the many brutal crimes they committed. The practice of creating SS divisions from volunteers in occupied countries was a well-established German strategy. Similar divisions existed in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Denmark. In the territory of Yugoslavia, there were also SS units made up of Kosovo Albanians and Yugoslav ethnic Germans, Volksdeutsche, such as the Prince Eugen Division. The Handjar Division came into existence in 1943, in the aftermath of massacres committed by Chetnik forces in eastern Bosnia. The Muslim community, seeking weapons or protection from the German authorities, was pivotal in its formation. The division was initially intended to protect homes and families, but this agreement didn't last long. Instead, the unit was sent abroad, making it known as the only SS unit to revolt against the Germans and the Nazi regime after being sent to France. During this uprising, 8 German officers were killed. Those who managed to escape tried to join the French resistance, but were soon captured and executed. But eventually, the division was sent back in Croatia, from where the infamous atrocities were committed later. Over the past half-century, the Handjar Division has been frequently labeled as infamous, especially in Serbian literature, and has been accused of committing war crimes and violations of the laws and customs of war. The Handjar Division was a German SS unit predominantly comprising Bosnian Muslim members, but it was commanded by German officers. In this context, it's not surprising that the division led a bloody war against the Partisans. The German officers applied tactics in northeastern Bosnia that they had learned on the Eastern Front. They ordered the burning of villages, destruction of food sources, and killing of civilians. After the war, the State Commission for the Determination of Crimes of the Occupiers and their collaborators assessed that the Handjar Division had killed about 1,800 civilians in northeastern Bosnia and around 500 in Srem. After the capitulation and dissolution of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in April 1941, the majority of Muslim political and religious leaders initially supported the independent state of Croatia, NDH. However, disappointment quickly followed. During World War II, the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina was included in the NDH, which was established with the support of Nazi Germany on April 10, 1941. Soon after its establishment, the NDH began a campaign of genocide against Serbs, Jews, and Roma, opening numerous concentration camps. A portion of the Muslim population aligned themselves with the Ustaše and participated in these crimes. In addition to their other tactics, the Ustaše employed a particularly cunning and malicious strategy to further fuel hatred and conflict between Muslims and Serbs, even among those who had previously helped each other during the war. This strategy involved committing horrific crimes against the innocent and unarmed people living in local areas while pretending to be Muslims. The perpetrators would call each other by Muslim names and dress as Muslims, creating the false impression that these atrocities were actually being committed by Muslims. This deceitful tactic was aimed at creating additional conflict between the occupied nations. After returning to Croatia from France, the Handžar Division launched its largest operation against partisan units during World War II. These battles were characterized by intense and often brutal combat. As the partisans gained strength and territory, the Handžar Division's operations became more desperate and savage. One of the most notable confrontations occurred in Bosnia, where the division, employing tactics learned on the Eastern Front, engaged in ferocious battles with the well-organized and determined partisan units. The Handžar Division was infamous for its treatment of captured or wounded partisans. Reports and testimonies from this period paint a harrowing picture of torture and executions. Prisoners of war were often subjected to inhumane treatment, including physical and psychological torture. In numerous instances, wounded partisans who fell into the hands of the division were not afforded the rights of war prisoners. Instead, they were summarily executed, often after enduring cruel torture. Aware of the harrowing fate that awaited them if captured by the Handžar Division, wounded soldiers often saved their last bullet or grenade for themselves, choosing to end their own lives rather than fall into the hands of such a notoriously brutal enemy. One of the more heinous acts committed by the Handžar Division involved targeting partisan field hospitals. These assaults were brutal and indiscriminate, with the division's soldiers killing medical staff, patients, and wounded soldiers alike. In these attacks, no distinction was made between combatants and non-combatants. Everyone present in these facilities was considered a target. The division's soldiers, driven by a ruthless agenda, aimed to eliminate any support system that could aid the partisan resistance, blatantly disregarding the protected status of medical facilities under the laws of war. As the war drew to a close, the Handžar Division's strength and morale dwindled significantly. Many soldiers, disillusioned and weary of the relentless and brutal nature of the conflict, began to desert. The division's remaining forces, considerably weakened and fragmented, continued to fight scattered battles against the Partisans, but their effectiveness and cohesion as a fighting unit had been severely compromised. On August 17th, Josip Broz declared an amnesty for members of the Handžar Division who deserted and joined the Partisans. During September alone, about 2,000 members left the division. This number continued to grow, and by the end of the year, the division had almost ceased to exist. Ultimately, the Handžar Division's campaign ended with the war's conclusion in 1945. Their surrender to the Allied forces marked the end of one of the most controversial and brutal chapters in the history of military engagements during World War II. The division's legacy, marred by atrocities and war crimes, remains a dark testament to the extremes of human cruelty and the devastating impact of ideological warfare.